Yeah, that's right. Bless you. Yeah, that's right. Say hello. My water bottle. What have you done with it? Yeah, it's my water bottle. Okay. Yeah, do you see the water bottle? You want the water bottle? There you go. Okay, gonna let people filter in. No, you cannot touch the trackpad. Do you want to get down? Okay, let's get down. Okay, you don't have to get down. I'll put you back up. Okay, 4. Hello, 4 people. 3 people again. You scared them off. Why'd you scare them off? It's scary when the TA's here. Yeah, that's right. You tell them. Boo. Hello. Person who said hello. Yay. Alright, so I'm going to give it like another minute or two before starting. Trying to think of any housekeeping stuff. I don't have much. Next week the class is going to be observed by another instructor from Kent State, just for every year, every semester I have to do like a faculty teaching review. So that's going to be done next week. So just FYI, not that that's really going to impact anything because it'll just be another voice in the YouTube chat, but just a heads up. He has announcements though. This is William. He clearly has things to share. That's right. But I can't really think of anything. Let me know if anybody has any questions about anything. We're gonna just keep plugging away as we do in this semester. Obviously today's Pfizer news is excellent. So he's excited. So yeah. I don't know. I'll get started, and then people can filter in as they see fit. But welcome to today's lecture, and so the next few lectures, which is to say, like the last 3 lectures, are going to be. So we're kind of like entering a different phase of the class. Basically, is that first of all, like there's no more like after week 10 I put a stop to prompts for the discussion board, and my brain hasn't even really woken up yet apparently, But I put there's no more discussion board prompts. Good job with those, everybody. I know I'm getting still caught up on grading all of that, but you have all kept it going, which is excellent. And the responses I have seen are pretty good. So I haven't seen anything that warrants negativity or anything. In terms of the topics, so really, the only thing you have left is get your game kind of in a nice state, which is good. And that's really what the next month or so is about. If you have not yet, and I realize that technically the deadline passed, but I'm also co-running this event, so we could add stuff if we needed to. Obviously we're hurting for a end of semester. Usually what I would do is I would have an end of the semester event, and I'd get tables set aside at the student center, and you could show your games off to people. We don't totally have that. We don't have the opportunity to do that this semester for obvious reasons. But one thing that I did think we could do, if you saw the submission link for... I know. If you saw the submission link for the art show, we do have... No, you cannot have that tablet pen. There's the submission link for the art show, but he wants the tablet pen. If you saw the submission link for the art show, you could submit these games to them. They are judged by your faculty members, and we understand what a prototype is. So my thought is, if you would like your game to be included in that, don't hesitate to shoot out an email. Justin McCrae is the one handling that, but also, just let us know if you'd like your game included in that, because, obviously we think your games are cool. So, and the work I've seen so far is really excellent. So, definitely don't hesitate to submit to that, especially because, if you think about it, it's going to be in a few weeks. So you'll be at a near final state by then. So, don't be shy about submitting these works, because I think they're nice portfolio pieces to show off that you are tackling some of these, harder topics that are not just entertainment. But that was the only thing I had. Again, let me know if there are questions about any of this. But now that there are 5 people here, I'm going to get started with the lecture for today, which in the spirit of the class changing gears and winding down, you've learned basically everything you need to learn about well, that's not true. We're not going to talk as much about the transformational game design stuff anymore. The next 2 weeks are going to be about aspects of game design that are more general and can really help with any kind of game you're making. We'll just kind of aim that at transformational games for the sake of the class, but they're actually lectures that I give in both my Games for Education class and my game prototyping class, because they are there's just stuff that make games good and that are good pieces of advice for game designers. So that's the next 2 weeks. This week it's a little bit of a weird lecture, but it's also one of my favorites to give, because it's a lot has come up in I guess the world, we'll say, especially post this week, about service and social justice and these other things. And I like giving this lecture because it's the game industry it's hard to think about when you are a student and you are like focusing on your career and focusing on learning these like annoying, like difficult pieces of software, you know, and you're generally like stressed about establishing yourself. But one of the things that I think has been one of the most important parts of my own career and the careers of a lot of people that I know has been the ability to, you know, stand up for and help others in the game industry reach their own goals. So that's something that I really believe in a lot. You know, a community service oriented take on game on being in an industry, and the ability to advocate for others to have a place in the industry. I think that's really important, because like we work in something that is fairly privileged. Like we're not exactly you know, we're not on the front lines of like, you know, COVID or something like that. Like we are not you know, clawing and biting for like construction contracts, especially again in this like sort of you know, messed up year. But you know, we're not we work in something where we get to make pieces of entertainment, and you know, but at the same time those pieces of entertainment, they can make people's dreams come true. They can be the aspirational thing that people want to get into, as a sort of like having made it feeling. They can inspire people, and that's what, you know, a lot of this class is about. It's about making games that inspire people to make the world a better place. And you know, it's so I think these things have enormous positive effect. You know, even though a lot of people think of them as ultimately frivolous, I think, you know, like any art, they can also be very impactful. But giving people the ability to have that impact, or even if they do just want to, like, again, make rocks at Blizzard or something like that, that's cool too. So, you know, but that there are opportunities for people, especially people that like don't look like me, because I mean, you know, privilege and stuff. I think it's really important to keep that in mind. So you may not feel that you're in a position right now to enact some of these things, but I want you to think about, you know, one of the highlights that I really, in case you haven't noticed, that I really want you to start thinking about as you leave school is that, you know, you are focused on maybe yourself at 21, 22 right now, and as a person who's just coming out. But what is it going to be like when you're 25, 26, 27, 30, 31, 32, 33, and like you've gone through those steps to become more established? What can you do to help people like you or people unlike you get their spot at the table? So, you know, today we're going to look at ways to empower your fellow designers. And those of you who are, for example, in like the leadership of the club, or even just, you know, having membership in the club are already doing this. I'd like to point that out. You're already starting to do this, and you know, I hope you keep it up, because you know what you're doing is really amazing, and that doesn't stop. Like organizing as a community leader in your local game community does not stop after you get out of college, because like as I've said, like that's maybe your first step. That's your first like and most immediate locality, but then maybe there's like the Akron game developers or the Cleveland game developers or the IGDA. You know, there's all of these places where that work still continues, and you can still advocate for each other. So what we're going to talk about is this is not a terribly long lecture, but I do hope that we can have a good discussion about it, because so to give you some background on why I talk about this is that I am a lifetime member of the IGDA, International Game Developer Association, and obviously educator. So that's a really important part of this to me. But the other thing is that, like, when I was in Washington D.C., so a lot of you knew that, like, I lived and worked in D.C. for a while, but I also, I'm from this area, so living in DC, we had a very active IGDA. I was its chairperson for about 2 years. I was on its board for longer than that. In that time, we really were working on setting up local arcades, trying to find venues that you could have local independent developers have their games visible by audience members. And that came from, like, a lot of our members would make really excellent work, but would not always necessarily have access to things like the IGF or things like that, because, as I've said before, those cater to a very specific type of game that is not achievable by a lot of people, unless you, again, like, have kind of a hookup in like the California or Vancouver scenes or Seattle scenes or something like that. So we wanted to sort of have a more local grassroots version of that. So we were working with, institutions. When you're in Washington, D.C., a local institution is like the Smithsonian. So we were able to get some good stuff going there. But, I've tried to bring that back home, where now we have starting this weekend, actually, Game Fest Akron, which is going to be last year was an in-person festival. This year it is an online festival of indie games, including one from your fellow students at Kent State University. I recused myself from judging that one, don't worry. But the idea of, like, let's give people in a region a means to get their game out there. So it's something that I really believe in. And again, especially with, opportunities for people who would feel otherwise not having access, whether they be inner city or rural or whoever, that's an important part of this kind of work. So, we're going to talk about building communities. We're going to talk about building game events. And then a case study, appropriately enough, the White House Game Jam. So it's not a game, but I can tell you about an event I participated in 2014, run by a game industry member who became part of the Obama-Biden administration, to create educational games. So, that sort of community building can really have wide-ranging impacts. So let's talk about game communities. And again, I really want you all to, again, I know your brain may not be in this place right now, but think about where you can find people. And then, like, again, if you're in the club, think about the work you do now and how that is going to, how that can be continued throughout your career. Because even if you don't feel like you're in a position of, like, let's call it leadership, you actually might find that you might be more positioned than somebody else, and then even, like, meeting you might be the way that somebody gets a contact or something like that. You never know. Like, it can certainly happen. So game communities take plenty of shapes and come together for many different purposes. Some are for developers, other are for fans. Some serve both of these audiences. Some are small, some are huge. Some exist in the real world and others online, mostly online these days. Here's a picture of, so the fellow in the front there in the Mario hat is my good friend Josh Lynch. He he started this group called Street Pass DC. And when the Nintendo 3DS first came out, he he'd traveled in Japan and saw all of the like micro interactions that games like Dragon Quest 9, was it 9? I think it was 9, had between them, for metropolitan areas in Japan, and he wanted to recreate that. When Nintendo 3DS has that Street Pass feature where if you're not familiar, two people having a Nintendo 3DS that is set to sleep mode in their pockets can walk past each other, and a little bit of data might be exchanged, but that data can help you do little things in games. So there were some games on the 3DS's operating system that took advantage of this, and then there were some other games that had it integrated into their gameplay. It wasn't a lot, and it wasn't like, here's a social security number and a list of your fears amount of data. It was like just, your name and your me character. But it created a really fun, interesting, social experience. So he wanted a means to, make that go faster. He wanted a means to sort of, put the gas on this experience and allow people to have a space where they could come together and take advantage of this and also meet some like-minded cool gamer people. Somebody says, I remember that the Me Quest was one of my favorites. Yeah, Me Quest was like the thing everybody was really into in the Street Pass group, especially. So, these meetups started in DC, but what happened was you had people in New York be like, hey, that's a cool idea. And then people in cities all around the country. And Josh actually was interviewed by Kotaku and became like Nintendo invited him to E3 with them. He became sort of an unofficial Nintendo advocate person. And then even got so his day job is as a social media manager, and he actually got to do social media management for a few games, years ago, and before really just moving on to other stuff. But he worked in the game industry because of this, and it was because he had a weird idea to do a social media experiment with a cool thing on his 3DS. So, that was a really cool thing. And actually, I do have a story about this. Let me keep this group in mind, when I talk about events and things like that. Here's another game development community. I should have updated this picture. But here's from the 2019 Global Game Jam. I should have taken the picture from last year's Global Game Jam. But while it seems cheesy to put our school's picture in there, I'm doing this for a reason. Street Pass network groups started so that small groups of gamers could have a more formal social structure in which to play their favorite games. Game development groups start because people who want to make games come together to support one another and hold each other accountable. And by that I mean hey, why haven't you worked on your game? And I haven't seen anything out of your game in the last 2 months. Man, it was so good. I really hope you keep at it. Kind of thing. That's what I mean by accountable. Not scary deadline accountable, but just sort of encouragement and play testing and things like that. And again, it's really hard because we're not in person, but at least this is why I encourage you, for example, to go on each other's sites and give each other feedback and play each other's games, because this is the kind of thing that we can do in a classroom, for example, is get together and just play each other's work, give each other encouragement, give each other tips. It breaks my heart when I see people just kind of stick to their groups or stick to their computers when if you can allow yourself to take like 5 minutes to get up, not only will it be better for you to like stand up and not look at the glowy rectangles, I finished a massive amount of animation last week, and just could not bring myself. I squeaked out some on Friday, but I have not been able to bring myself to do work, like game dev work, for days, because I just like hit a brick wall, because I like hit a milestone. But it's that, like getting up and moving around, even if it is to just look at somebody else's stuff, gives you a break even. But allowing yourselves to mingle, to look at each other's work, to compliment each other, that's how people become really good at this. It's not privately working on Maya in a bubble. It's that if you, and there are people, and I don't say that like all of you do this. I actually see a lot of you get up and like talk to each other and help each other and encourage each other. That's why I was like, when somebody in my animation theory class said, could we have a share your work channel? And then people, I took that into Games for Education and I see people using it. That's like the best feeling, because you're doing the thing. you're doing it. So I'm happy that that's, a resource for you, and for everybody. So, communities help one another reach goals by, if you're a person who's like really good at this, you can post your work and get feedback. If you're really far along in this. If you're not as far along in this, that's okay, because you can get encouragement from the people that are further along. Maybe, they give you something to kind of like aspire to. They let you, you're all letting each other, you all raise each other up by showing your work and not only offering like explicit help, but also just, setting a bar, and then people can like figure out what the bar to work towards is. That lifts everybody up. And doing all this is an important game industry skill. I know it's everybody always asks me, well, what do I write for this on my resume? Well, if you are in the leadership in your game development club, if you're a member of your game development club, or especially if you're a leadership in the game development club, that should be on your resume. You would put that under a section called memberships. So, like if you're a member, you can put that under memberships, kind of thing. And same thing with like, if you join IGDA, you can also put that under your professional membership section of your resume. But in terms of just like being a good community member, those are collaborators on game projects, which become resume items. That's, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. That is, references, like, you'll eventually like build a network of people who can be like, yeah, they're, a really positive community member. Somebody says, what if I don't use the share work channel? It's hard. Like I'm talking a lot about a lot of social things that can be legitimately hard for people. It's okay to not feel that you have the ability to like participate in that way. So there was a guy that was on our IGDA board when I was president, who was not a game developer. He liked games a lot, but he was not coming to our community as a developer. But he thought it was really fascinating, like to be around game developers, and it was a really cool thing because he just like went and was a positive member of the community. He gave to the community by playing each other's games, just being kind of like generally upbeat about things. And, like if you're not doing your own work, or you're in kind of one of those like situations. I've done this with like my Game Boy game for the last few weeks. Like I've been too busy to work on the Game Boy game because I've been crunching so hard for the other thing, to the point where like on weekends when I usually would do my Game Boy game, I'm just like burnt out, right? So, but I've joined the Game Boy Maker, that's the engine I'm making in Discord. And I try to go on there. It's been like the last week because I've been a little loose on this, but stuff. Um, but I still try to like go on the Discord to be part of the community, because like when I am able to sit down and devote some work time to it, those are going to be like the people that I think would be like a community that I'd want to let know about the game. So I go on there. I'll like people's work. Even if you just like throw a smiley their way, or say like, "Wow, that looks awesome." That can be as important as having a deliverable. So even if you're not in the place where you can maybe have output, you can still be like, hey, that looks great, way to go. Showing off work I'm done instead of catching up on. I mean, so somebody's asking about like, for this case in particular. Well, first of all, like I think the share work is not for classwork. It's for you. It's your resource. So like it's not like it's not like that's being graded. Like I'm sensing a bit of a misconception that it's being graded in some way. No, or judged. Like, no way. It's literally for you to be like, hey, check it out. And like, I've tried to do that myself. When I have posted things like the Game Boy game, like you don't, the Game Boy game isn't something that has anything to do with any of my academic Kent State work. But to keep it kind of hopping, I like to throw it out there to be like, hey, guess what? Check it out. And don't worry about that. Like, first of all, if you are doing stuff, you shouldn't be afraid to show it off, because like, this is I'll say this is a really hard field. And, this is why the grading system I have is based on like, if you do everything in the class according to the class, you get a B. But some of the A behaviors are the sort of like positive outreachy behaviors. And the reason for that is that, at least in my experience, the people that it's really hard for the people that are just like, well, I did all the things I'm supposed to do in Maya, because it's not like, the field that I came from, which was architecture, where there's like the town's architecture firm. So if you could draft in CAD, you were probably going to be okay to just like go to one of your local architecture firms and get a job. That's not really how this works. Like, we have a little bit more of an uphill battle. And I don't say that to intimidate anybody. I say that out of a genuine desire to see you all succeed, and to like, the joke coming out of my school was always that like we were being trained to be the heads of firms, but then you have to go and be somebody's CAD monkey for untold years before you actually get to make any design decisions, and then by then your design decisions have been kind of beaten out of you. I don't want to put you in the situation where you think you're going to go and win an IGF because you get a degree. I want you to understand what this takes, and yeah, it takes a little bit of what's going to seem like extracurricular work, but that's why the grading system is the way it is, because it's supposed to model good behavior. And one of the good behaviors is like, if you're doing this stuff on the side and you're like, basically it comes down to intrinsic motivation. If you're doing stuff, somebody says, hey, it's the way I see it is more, hey, look what I'm doing instead of classwork. No, it's not that you're doing it instead of classwork. It's that you're kind of taking that extra step. And this is kind of what I'm trying to get at, is that you're clearly intrinsically motivated to do this, as opposed to like extrinsically motivated is the people that are like, okay, well, I made this and only this, give me my grade. You know, and I understand, like, if, you know, and I'm not, if that's you, but it's because of time, not because you're not motivated, like, that's fine. Like, I'm not judging people on that. But if you are doing stuff also on the side, that's great. Like, if you are able to, that's really great. Like, that means you've got like the bug to do this, and you're fighting for this. So like, that's what this is ultimately about, is this is like, you're participating in the world of this beyond just, again, like just having being in the class. You are taking that next step. So like, celebrate that, show that off, you know, absolutely do it, because that's like really one of the most important, that's going to get you there. You know, that's going to get you, like, this is why, like, I participate in these organizations. This is why I volunteer at GDC, because, you know, it's like you're participating in the whole ecosystem of game making, instead of just being like, all right, I learned Maya, reward me. That, like, because, you know, everybody knows Maya, but not everybody has a project on their own, or releases a game on their own, or goes to IGDA meetings, or, you know, even just like, again, not everybody has all the time in the world, but even if you, like, you know, just go on and be like, hey, you rock, you know, do, like, participate as much as your time allows, but find a way to participate. Because if you show up, and if any of you are fans of the Bachelor franchise, and like the current, you know, my wife and I watch it, and the current Bachelorette overuses that phrase to the point where I feel a little gross saying it. It sounds like just a bad catchphrase at this point, even though it's a really important catchphrase for this. If you participate and you show up, that's really important, even if it is like a, hey man, you know, like, I don't have a ton of time, but I can participate in this way. And if you are doing stuff, show it off. Nobody's going to think that it's instead of your classwork. Again, that's not graded. That's a resource. That's yours. That is your channel for you to be like, hey, this is what I'm passionate about. And especially if you show off what you're passionate about, that's really important, because like, if we don't know what you're passionate about, it's one of those things where, like, if you're passionate about something in this field, tell us, because we can, like, you know, like, we make up assignments because everybody's got to do the certain assignments. These are the assignments that are shown to, both in our training and in our experience, to help people get to where they want to be. If there's something that you want to, a lot of you are taking my animation theory, so let's think about the bouncing ball for a second. One of the things that Disney animators used to say about the bouncing ball is, like, depending on how people interpreted the bouncing ball, was where they might end up in terms of a department. So if somebody had like a stripe on the ball, and the stripe consistently moves and like doesn't blink in and out of place, like it moves smoothly rotating around the ball. They might be like, hey, that person needs to work on the technical department doing all this water splashes and fire and stuff like that. You know, we can talk to you about bending these assignments to help you reach your goal. You know, don't forget that. Like, who wrote the assignments? I did. Who can change the assignments? I can. You know, so if, you know, I can't let you like, hey, can I do this instead? No, but I can help you sort of like, if that helps you find your way to what you're passionate about by like, you do the assignment, but you like add your twist to it, let's go. That's awesome. And again, show off your passion, show off your work. If you're working on something and you're excited about it, don't hide it, show it. Nobody's going to think you're doing it instead. Everybody's going to be like, dang, look at you go. So yeah, that's awesome. Anyway, I got to get through some slides. So participating in groups is a really important part of developing a positive development ecosystem, especially if you live in an area where there are not big studios. Especially like here. You know, so these communities help independent creators because that's what you are. You're an independent creator. Even if you're not trying to get into indie games, you're indie until you're hired by a big studio. So, you know, like, embrace the ability to like work on your stuff, right? So these communities help independent creators find testers, encouragement to finish or launch, feedback. You know, it helps your launched games get visibility. Like, I had a successful Kickstarter last year for my tabletop game. And I wouldn't have had a successful Kickstarter if I didn't have a community of people that were like, hey, Chris has a Kickstarter. Everybody go check it out. And that's not to say that the game is not genuinely good. I have enough like external feedback such that I can objectively say it is a good game. But, you know, a lot of that was like, there's a lot of good games that nobody knows about because there's no network for people to spread the word about. So, you know, networks are great for both like the feels and for, you know, the you know, practical reasons of actually running your business. So, but you've got to be good to people. That's the other thing. It's like, don't be a jerk and don't act like, you know, it's all the people that I know that are the worst in the game industry are the people that look at all relationships as transactional. They don't really retain. There's a person I worked with in DC that they were involved in Sam Arcade for a while, and they kind of like invited themselves to the party after it became a success. And they would always be like, hey, I got this person. You want this person involved because they're a big name and I know this person. I got this person. And it'd be like, awesome, thank you very much. That's great. So they would be like signed up to be a judge or something like that. And then they would flake. You know, every reviewer, every judge for this competition that this person signed up would flake. And it was because he didn't actually make strong connections. He just attached himself to people who were names and thought, okay, I have brought value. When the reality of it was that, you know, it's like, no, you gave me a headache because this person was given 10 games to look at. They flaked. And then, so I got to give people extra games, or I got to do them myself. And you got 3 people, so that's 30 games I got to fill, right? Because you're not bringing people you're bringing people for vanity instead of, you know, instead of people who you can count on and who count on you and who believe in you. So, you know, it is important to be good and be genuine in this, you know, to be kind of earnest about this. So but you know, it's great if you have a set group to go to, you know, so again, the club here, your share your work discords. And again, don't be shy. Nobody's judging you on like, oh, is this classwork? No, forget that. I want to see your inspiration and what makes you excited. Let's go. Let's support you, right? That's what this is for. And like, so go to your groups, put yourself in a position. Sometimes you do. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up with my notes here. Sometimes you find yourself in a position where you have to start your own group, or at least help lead a group that already exists. So, sometimes like there might be a group, but maybe it needs a little like gentle push, and maybe you can be a person that helps that gentle push. This is a thing that's very prone to imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to do that? And, a lesson that I've learned in my career is that sometimes the person you are is the person to send the email or start writing the document or make the spreadsheet, and that's it. But that is the important thing, because everybody's waiting for like, I remember when I wrote my level design book, thinking the entire time, who the hell am I to be writing a level design book? Why isn't Cliff Bleszinski write a level design book? Or John Romero or somebody like that. And like, I can tell you that, and later in the process, I had this idea like, well, what if I had some interviews or something like that from people who have dealt with this? So there was a person, I'm not going to like name names, not out of like any bad stuff. Like, it was a very, very positive interaction. I just don't want to like be like blah blah blah, but I emailed this person and was like, hey, could you do an interview for this book about architecture and level design? And they were like, hey, we don't really have the time to be able to do that right now, sorry, but this sounds awesome and we're glad this is finally being done. And like, now like 7 years later, a lot of people really appreciate that work. And that became the thing that like, I am mainly known for in the industry. And all it was is that I was the person that opened up the Word document and said, all right, I'm going to start chapter 1. Because other people were doing other things, and and then most people were just, who were in that position where I was like, well, why don't they do it? They were relieved, like, oh, somebody finally did it. Thank God. So sometimes you're just the person who sits down and does it. So, if you're thinking like, well, who am I to start a game dev community? Why not? Like, there's lots of game dev communities that are just started by people that like, maybe they did some Unreal tutorials and maybe they want to get together with like-minded people with creative projects to do. So they do. And bam, community. That's essentially how this works. So don't be afraid if you do find yourself in a position to have to start something to do that. I think it's valuable and the world needs more of it. So, you have to have in-person, well, you don't have to have in-person meetings anymore. You have to run meetings. So, okay. So, let me know if there are any questions. That got like way off script, but I hope it was valuable. Again, so to cover some of the information though, communities exist and can be very fruitful for people. It is a place where you can gather with like-minded people and, share your passion, share your work, get feedback, lift each other up, things like that. Joining one if you have access to one. And in this area, it's, there's the Columbus Game Developers, COGG. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but COGG is the acronym. So there's a group in Columbus, CGD, Cleveland Game Developers. They're the local group here. They are doing online meetings. I'm pretty sure the Columbus folks got to be doing online meetings. I'm closer to Cleveland than to Columbus, so that's why I know the Cleveland one better. You've got the group at Kent State, the club at Kent State. You've got this class. And then, the other thing too is like, there are groups now, so many groups are doing online meetings that you can, like, they don't be like, oh, you're not in Boston, you can't join our Boston meeting. They'd be like, hey, person from Cleveland, what's up? Even though you're not from Cleveland, but, just to people out of the region, just be like, Cleveland? Or Columbus, whichever you're closest to. And the other thing too is like, if you join the IGDA, you can join their Discord too. So the Discord for IGDA, like, it's not always like where everybody is all the time, but like the advice area is like kind of active. It does pretty good. So like, it's a good resource, I would say, if you join that, but you need to have a membership number to be able to sign in there. But wait, you're saying, what about all those famous game designers who work long hours by themselves without ever seeing or speaking to any other game developers? Sure, that exists. I like Stardew Valley. It's cool. But, they're held up as game dev heroes, but we hear about them because of something called survivor bias. Survivor bias is the tendency to highlight the stories of outliers that worked through difficult situations rather than discussing how these situations stop 99.9% of people. So, for every Stardew Valley, there's like thousands of people that tried to do a Stardew Valley thing and then crashed and burned because they had no support. So, be aware of that. In the case of game development, we're told that the lone dev can do it if they work hard enough, have enough passion, and if their game is good enough, which is all BS. Communities are great. Great games get ignored on marketplaces all the time. Like I said, I credit successes that I have had to maintaining a network and not being a dick. And that second part is also very important. Liv Wheaton's rule. Communities can't fix this for everybody, but it helps. And again, don't let good be the enemy of perfect. Even if a community doesn't give you absolutely every single thing you want, like, you want to learn to market your game and your game dev community doesn't have any people who are marketing savvy, don't stop going to the game development community. Just, like, fine, that's cool. But like, I bet they know something that you don't know, or they might know somebody that they can get you in touch with to help you. It's a path. It's not a straight shot. This is, if you go there, if you participate, that's what's important. Let me know if there are questions, please. Especially talking about like survivor bias or, talking about imposter syndrome, especially. This is a great lecture to talk about imposter syndrome, I think. Because we all have it. Like, everybody has it. And if you think people don't have it because they're super successful, I've got a few stories for you of like talks I've been to where I've been to like, wait a minute, what? Did that person just like out themselves with imposter syndrome? This person that worked on Amazing Thing number 7. So, game communities, when it comes to sites, so one of the things that you need to deal with, and this is for like the shining day when there is not a pandemic anymore. But, we can talk about how to do this with online as well. So when it comes to sites, the best place, when you are dealing with sites, if you're ever organizing stuff, the best places are well lit, open to all ages. Lots of communities do a drink up, and that's where devs meet up in bars. And that can be like your flavor for your community. I know that's like kind of a traditional thing in Silicon Valley communities, and like in DC, we had a very big like the drink up culture because happy hour is an Olympic sport in Washington D.C. And that can be a thing, but what you find is that can also make people that don't look like me feel uneasy because it's a dark environment. There's alcohol involved, and you get into situations where maybe somebody is not 21, but they are making something really cool, and like they get kind of aged out of it, which sucks. So it's better, what CGD does is, again, when they're not not online, they meet in coffee shops or at libraries or at and IGDA DC has started to do this. They've gone to like libraries and things like that, so they actually have a very good working relationship in the library that like used to near where my house used to be, which like man. But because I remember like when that place was built, I was like I want to have IGDA meetings there, and then we just didn't have any good contacts, and then they got them after I moved away, and I was like, damn it. But having these events in like good places for like where people of all ages can be, that are brightly lit, that are welcoming, that will increase the diversity of your community. Community diversity is really important because, again, we're all doing this together. We're not doing this. We want to be aware of, the social openness that we should build with these organizations. What I was going to say. So, some places are very open. Others will ask you to buy a minimum amount of food. So, be sure to like talk with places if you ever are doing this. And then having partnerships is really good where, think about it this way. Having a well-running community can make you a resource to the community around you. So once you're running, what you find is that sometimes you'll be reached out to by like, hey, we have a library and we want to have a learn how to make video games night, or a school doing same sort of thing. Like, can you come do a thing at our school? Or, I've even, again, one of my claims to fame is like working with art museums that have said like, hey, we really are interested in having games in our art museum or having a family event or something like that. What can we do? And you are the local expert because you run the community. Again, sometimes if you're ever wondering like, who am I to do this? Sometimes you're the person who sits down and writes the email or makes the spreadsheet, and that is all that's needed. It's not that you have to be Shigeru Miyamoto to be able to start an IGDA chapter. You just have to live in a place and want to do it, and be a member of IGDA, or not a member of IGDA, and you make, your own sort of Cleveland game developer equivalent or something like that. So, but if you pull that together, then your work pulling it together makes you the expert and makes you the resource for games in that area, and then you'll be reached out to. So you help create an ecosystem, and that's really good. Groups that you should know about as a Kent State student include Cleveland Game Developer Meetup, the Central Ohio Game Dev Group. So that's what COG is for, Central Ohio Game Dev Group. I should remember that more easily. Youngstown Game Developers, which I think are called Copper Creek now. I don't know what their situation is anymore, but I might have to look into that. But there is one in there are people in Youngstown that are awesome, and you should talk to them. You should also generally be aware of IGDA, which any developer in the world can join. For students, it's $30 a year, very affordable. And I'm not trying to plug it because I get anything back for that. I don't. IGDA has been awesome. So I would highly recommend, again, if you're serious about doing this, joining. because that can be an excellent resource. It's also way cheaper than any other professional organization I've ever seen. When I was in architecture, yearly subscription to be part of the AIA, American Institute of Architects, was like $200 a year, and IGDA is like $45 or $50 a year for like out of school people. In school it's $30, so it's pretty cheap. Being an IGDA offers access to educational online materials as well as access to events, even travel funds for certain conferences, and again, a really cool Discord which has been launched fairly recently. They have a lot of really good online stuff. It's also important to know about online communities and charities that help raise money for causes. Organizations such as Games Done Quick, Extra Life, and Able Gamers are social gaming communities that help others. It's not uncommon for game development groups to also work with organizations like these, so you get the best of both worlds, making games and playing games to help people. Ask me 2 questions before I move on to the last bit. Is this last bit? I can't remember. Yeah, it's the last bit. So ask me 2 questions before I do this. While I wait for the 2 questions, while I wait for 2 questions, hey look, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is, if you've never heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's a way of charting out what we might also call imposter syndrome, which, if you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's that nagging feeling that every creative person has that says, I'm not good enough, I know it, but nobody else knows it, and they're going to find me out and banish me at any second. And it's fake. Well, it's not fake. It's real. But the fact that people are going to find you out and banish you is fake. And so, again, waiting on 2 questions. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to move on the lecture until I get 2 questions. So, the way Dunning-Kruger works is that you have expertise and confidence as these 2 axes. And when you have a little bit of expertise, so if we track this as like learning Maya, okay? I'm picking on Maya a lot today, but why not? Maya deserves it. Like let's say you made a crate in my Maya class. You think, and so your confidence is like you create your first 3D model and you're like, I am God. I can create anything and everything that I want. See, look around you and behold my masterpiece. But then you start to learn a little bit more, you start going on ArtStation, and then your confidence starts to whittle down. As you participate mentally more in the industry and as you do like harder and harder tasks, you really start to not feel so great about yourself. But look, what's actually happening. Your expertise is growing. It's in fact many times more what it was when you felt that you were the king or queen of the world. Your confidence just happens to be going down because you're kind of more participating in the world around you. And what tends to happen is that like at some point you're going to be working long enough. And this is why I say don't be afraid, participate. Being around and being there and being visible is really one of the most important things, because what happens is eventually people are just going to start to be like, hey, oh yeah, that's so-and-so. That so-and-so being you. hey, that's so and so. They've been around. They're experienced. They know their stuff. And it's around this time that you start maybe even getting external validation. People start recommending you for things. People start reaching out to you. Maybe you even get an award for some of your work, that you're going to start slowly climbing back to this mountain. And then you have both expertise and confidence. In fact, more confidence than before, such that like you're good. You're pretty good. But to give you an idea of like who has imposter syndrome, the people that made Super Meat Boy, they're amazing, and they're like among the first like founders of that IGF crowd. And I remember listening to a podcast where I was just hearing Edmund McMullen from that team just like imposter syndroming all over the place. And this is like years after Meat Boy was published. And it's like, you're amazing. What, if that person can have it, still, and they've achieved what they've achieved, that really taught me, like, is it really worth listening to my own imposter syndrome? And then at GDEX this year, they had Grant Kirkhope, who did the music for Banjo-Kazooie and Goldeneye and all this stuff at Rare, and is amazing and like seems like a really cool dude. I'm kind of sad that like GDEX wasn't in person, because I could have met him. But he was talking at GDEX about getting the he was like, oh yeah, I was going to work on a game with Ubisoft. And then we had the team meeting and they're like, wait, this is a Mario game? It was Mario versus the Rabbids, the turn-based strategy game. And he's like, wait, I'm working on a Mario game? I'm working on Koji Kondo's music. And he started like being like, who, little old me? It's like, dude, you made Goldeneye. What are you talking about? So yeah, everybody gets it. That guy's an industry legend. He gets it. Okay, so the two questions. When doing an event like Global Game Jam or GDEX, what do you think is the best way to stay involved with the community is? I've gotten to both these events, but I live in fear of continued contact. You're not going to... Like, I've got stacks of business cards and I don't talk to everybody every day. First of all, that's number one. You're not going to talk to everybody every day. Discord's really good. Joining Discords together is really good. So that can be really good, or really positive. And if you're doing something localized like a global game jam, that can be nice, because what you end up getting is like that's your community that you see more often. So like you're going to have that regular contact. In the case of Kent State, we have the Kent State like Discord and things like that. If we were in person, we have like the meetings and whatnot. In terms of, if you go to GDEX, there are some people that I just see at GDEX. And like, I maximize my time with them when I get there. And it is like legitimately like being old friends. But, it really like everybody's got their lives, and nobody expects you to be like, you're not all going to walk out with like two halves of the same heart-shaped locket or something like that. But, you be there, you participate, you make good connections, follow each other on Twitter, become Facebook friends, follow each other on Instagram, or whatever you kids are using these days. That's often sometimes enough, but like that can be really helpful. Again, you start to build a little bit of a community. Like, again, for example, some of the organizers of GDEX, like, just through like repeated contact over the years, me and the other faculty members have gotten to know, because we're just both around. So as long as you're like around, that can be good enough. It's not like you have to write them, letters in you don't have to like write them letters every day or something like that. So don't feel that you need to like keep up all of the contact. And some people you will. Some people you'll be like, hey, that's my really good friend. And some people you're like, hey, that's my really good friend, but we really just kind of see each other twice a year or something like that. Yeah. What have you gained? What have you gained from being a part of these whole game dev communities? My whole career. My entire career. Like, I was able to become a GDC conference associate because people in my community in DC were GDC conference associates, and they were like, hey, we can write you a recommendation. And like, they only did that because they were like, hey, Chris is a nice guy. Like, we made a meaningful like friendship and connection, right? It's not like, they're handing out, recommendations or something like that. But, that's not how it works. Ian would be mad. But, it's like, he wouldn't be mad. Ian doesn't really get mad. But like, that's the sort of like connection you build, and then somebody says, hey, maybe like let's introduce you to this person or something like that. So the GDC Conference Associate Program, for those who don't know, I'm somehow not wearing a Conference Associate shirt, even though they're like a third of my wardrobe, is a organization of volunteers who go to GDC, and you get a full access pass, but in return, you do like 25 hours of work for the conference. So like checking badges at the door of talks, greeting in the lobby, things like that. And it sounds very transactional, but what you really get out of it, the thing that I think is the most important is that you are one of like 400 to 500 people who are all in this community together. That community can range from students to like, I've been a CA with like art directors at Blizzard, for example. And, that's a good, like, both social base camp for a giant intimidating conference, but also a community of people to check in with over the years. And again, like many of whom I am very good friends with. And, in fact, like, and again, talking about collaborators, the people that I'm making Nemo with are CAs. So, that's another community that you can join, or that you can apply to be a part of and then hopefully join. And we've had students get accepted. We had students get accepted to it last year, and then COVID happened. But, hopefully we get another crack at this. But, yeah, like, those connections have given me, some of my first commercial games were because I got connected to people at IGDA meetings. So, my whole career, basically. I feel a lot of my imposterness comes from the lack of direction, and I'm worried that I won't go anywhere. Like, again, it's hard. Like, all it takes, and even if you're the person, like, even if you were to go to like meetup.com and look up CGD, let me get those logos again. CGD, Cleveland Game Developer, they're the one in the upper left-hand corner there. That's CGD's logo. But even if you were to go to Meetup and sign up for their, for alerts for their group, and then you see like when they're doing an event and you click on the link, even if you just like do the equivalent of silently chilling in the back, that's fine, but then maybe like, I don't know, you'll chat with somebody. The goal is, work within your comfort level. Obviously do something more than not participate, because like not participating is just like shooting yourself in the foot. And again, ignore those situations, Stardew Valley, of people, and I'm not knocking Stardew Valley, I'm just saying like, this is a game you probably heard of that somebody did just like, I think the first time he met another game developer was actually at a event promoting Stardew Valley, or that was like, something where he was like speaking about his success with Stardew Valley. That was the first time he'd met another game developer, which is like, no, that's like an aberration. That doesn't happen. But even if you just like sign up and go online and just kind of like, chill in the back, that's cool. Like, It's fine. You don't have to be, because not everybody, like, I am a, like, I will say this. I am a extreme extrovert. So I acknowledge it's very easy for me to go to a group of people and be like, hey! And that's not the same for a lot of people. A lot of people find that level of social engagement really exhausting. And like even like GDC, by Friday, my extroversion is dead. It's broken and it doesn't come back until I like to talk about my April, May, have at least one April, May, like, chaser conference that is like super small and super chill and quiet, but it's still a game dev conference. So like I can feel like I can do game dev conferences again. But like, so, yeah, this can be very intimidating, and that's okay. In fact, it's intimidating for a lot of game developers because, game developers are stereotypically, not that you should always buy into stereotypes, but they're stereotypically a pretty quiet group. So even if you just kind of like sign up and listen in to the group chat or something like that, and that's cool. Like, it's cool. Don't worry about it. These groups are built for that, and they're usually headed by people who are okay with that. But don't stop yourself from going, because, like, again, a lot of these groups, frankly, are just people who are in the same boat as you, where it's like, hey, I kind of want to make stuff, or I'm making my little thing. It's my first thing. There's a lot of like people they're making something for the first time at a lot of these local meetups. And that's not to say like, oh, well, I want to go to the meetup where this is everybody's 50th time. Don't do that to yourself, please. Sometimes you really do need that collection of people that are making something for the first time to all band together and then make that thing. And then they can work on the second time and the third time. And then they can each have their own projects, and because they've had enough experience, and then make the fourth and fifth and sixth. That's how you get communities to do tons of output. And that's how IGDA DC was when I joined. It was like, there was only like 1 or 2 games coming out of that group like ever when I joined up. And then it turned into like everybody had their own projects that were on marketplaces. And we had like a festival in town and things like that. And now they have like festivals every year, half year, a quarter, or something like that. So there are a few different types of events. I got to go through this real quick. They began as community events initiated by a small group, but then grew. GDEX, Game Devs of Color Expo in New York, Meaningful Play in Michigan, Sam Arcade, that was mine, in DC, my community DC's. Global Game Jam started as something small. And then sometimes, like, if you don't wait for a Global Game Jam to do a game jam, sometimes it can be super helpful just to be like, this is what we did with IGDA DC, is you'd just have, like, on some random weekend, a game jam where you'd get together with people and do a game jam. It didn't have a crazy... Sometimes it's a topic. Sometimes it's just like, let's really quickly come up with a bunch of zany ideas and piece them together into a game. But some of the launched products, like there was this one awesome game called Tumbleweed Express, started as a game jam game where people just got together in somebody's apartment and jammed out a game, or a game prototype, and then they were like, oh, this has legs, let's turn it into something, and now it's on Steam. So game jams don't have to be Global Game Jam. They can be, hey, let's get together informally over a weekend. Or sometimes there are small online jams like Asylum Jam, where you make horror games that aren't about mental illness. There was Candy Jam, when King.com tried to trademark the word candy, and everybody's like, that, and they made games about candy. Ludum Dare, all the way up to the White House, not the current White House, but the past White House. Or the jam for this class, technically a game jam. Way longer than normal, but, that's kind of how you build one up. So that's why these tools exist, is if you all as a group are just like, let's sit down and create something, have a game jam, go for it. Same thing with festivals. In DC we did Sam Arcade, and then the people after my time in DC continued some of that work with District Arcade by kind of setting up their own smaller version locally. And that's finding a reason to show up with a few game developers and have a table in front of people is like, that's a game festival, and I've even thought about like, someday I'm going to do it. Someday I'm going to partner with some farmer's market and be like, yo, we have locally produced things. Can we come? That's what this is. So, events showcasing games. Make a Google form. That's it. All I've ever done is put together a Google form. Name, contact info, description of game, hardware needed to show, screenshots, link to playable demo. You get some people to judge it, and you find a place that'll let you set up a bunch of games. That's it. And you make a nice brand or something, and that's what we did again when we do the things when we have an in-person semester. We just show up to the student center, and people walk by and they're like, holy crap, games. Yes. So have a festival. You can do it. It's within the realm of your possibility. You may not believe it, but it is. Conferences, a little harder, a little bit of a bigger undertaking. But wow, why is the text still there from the other slide? Oops. But again, conferences can be local. It's not just GDC. They're not out of the realm. The point here is look for conferences. And sometimes smaller conferences can be really helpful because not everybody can afford to fly out to San Francisco. But like Columbus ain't so bad to get to. And a lot of the people go to both. So you have the benefit of getting both. Alternatively, if you are a member of a marginalized group for whom a typical professional game conference may not always cater to your needs, there are increasingly more game conferences that are for people in marginalized groups. So like, look for those. Those are hugely important, and they do great work. So please, look at those. So as the geographic and social makeup of the game industry evolves, it's important to find ways to build communities, provide resources to developers who would otherwise feel excluded by what so far has been traditional locales or demographics for game industry inclusion. You can do this for a living and be anyone or live anywhere, especially now where we are doing everything from anywhere online and with Zoom. So by helping to foster, this community or participating in these communities, you can help bring more people to that table. You can help people find their place again now that you can do it anywhere. Because like the jig is up on you have to move to a coastal city for this. Like, let's say that right now. The lid of Pandora's box has been removed, and it's going to be really hard to shove it back on. People are going to try, but it's going to be really tough to put that lid back on. And telework is going to be a thing people can do more often. So, we have the power to let people get attention for their work that they are doing in their own context. So it's not impossible for someone to make games without a community, but communities help you learn, share, grow, find an audience. So you should participate in them. And you should, if you have the means or the time, really it's mostly time, and knowledge of spreadsheets, you can build your own. And if you do that, game development can be better. Again, there's a neat map of the US from the ESA that says, here we are. This is where game developers are. As you can see, there's actually quite a few in Ohio, and even there's a bunch around the world. So That's it. Any questions? Rant over. I will say this. The other part of this comes in with a thing that helps this exist is engines, is middleware, so that we can all download Unreal or Unity is a huge part of this, because we are not tasked with creating our own engines, which was an older hurdle. Unity is probably one of the biggest innovations in the game industry. And I don't say that to like knock on Unreal, but like the reason that Unreal has a developer friendly licensing model is because between like 2009 and 2014, when Unreal 4 came out, Unity like shook up the way that game industry, like game engine business was done, and like ate Unreal's lunch until Unreal essentially Unity-ized itself. But then also, like, outside of those, Game Maker has been doing that shtick forever, even longer. Construct, and then like Pico 8, all of these, little engines. So engines are a really important part of this, where this is why I tell you, like, don't think because you take a college class on one or two things that is your destiny and fate. If you have a local game community, and I mean, think about it this way, like if you were to go to a place where there is bad computer access, are you going to roll in and try to tell people to buy a bunch of, with poor internet infrastructure, to buy a bunch of Alienwares and get, a bunch of like poor computer infrastructure, buy a bunch of Alienwares and get a bunch of Unreal license, or get Unreal? Excuse me. It's probably not the best idea. But like there are lots of things you can do, cheaply, leanly. I don't even know if that's a word, but like, when all of this COVID stuff started and we had to have my daughter do class at home, we had to get another computer. We got a Chromebook from their school for a portable one, but like at first we just bought like a little Raspberry Pi kit for $150, and that became her computer. And then we loaded Pico 8 on it, and we make games together. And that's like $15. So like $165 game making kit, and it also has Python on it. We can make stuff in Python. So, and it has Scratch. So it's $165 game making kit. So, this stuff it's getting cheaper. It's getting more possible. I would never tell somebody buying Alienwares to buy Alienwares. Yeah, I just needed a good, easy, like, what is expensive big game computer? Alienware. But again, like, let's like tear down the hurdles, tear down the walled garden. The garden is walled and it shouldn't be walled. So let's tear down the walls. That's what this is about. So anyway, make a prototype or something. That's it. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for staying extra time. I know I always do this to you, but today was good. Thank you for asking lots of questions. I hope that you, in your career, in your broader careers, I hope from the deepest part of my soul that you all make it in this industry. But then I also hope that you help other people make it, because that's how we make a better industry. And I'll leave you on that. Let me know if you have any questions in Discord, but I will talk to you later.